Brother, only in America, where your potential senator pulls out a gun and waves it at you, and you go, yes, yes, I might accidentally get shot. My lucky day. This guy used to be Chief Justice of the Alabama State Supreme Court. He lost that job because he refused to listen to the Constitution. He keeps wanting to put up the 10 Commandments everywhere, among many other things. He has gone off on homosexuals in this country, doesn't believe they should have the same rights. Okay, Roy Moore, if you make it into the Senate, we are ruled by a different document. It's called the Constitution. It's not the Bible, it's not the Old Testament. Okay, you're not running for Pope. But the good folks in Alabama, at least on the Republican side, are apparently likely to put him in a position where he might join us in the United States Senate. God help us all. He looks so funny with that picture. All right, anyways, bless their hearts in Alabama. What else can I tell you? All right, let's move forward. Okay, Steve Schmidt is a Republican consultant. He's worked on many campaigns, including John McCain's. And boy, he is furious about Donald Trump's fail surrounding the NFL. Now, as you guys all know, Kaepernick took a knee. He was protesting police brutality and all the unarmed black men in America being shot, and just overall better training for cops and more responsive to the community. I find that protest to be so uncontroversial, but a lot of the NFL owners did not agree, and you know the rest of the story where Donald Trump comes out and attacks in Alabama and says that anyone who takes a knee should be fired and calls him son of a bitch, etc. The whole NFL, pretty much hundreds of players, and by the way, coaches and now NFL owners taking a knee and joining in the protests in response. But nonetheless, I was a little surprised by Steve Schmidt's reaction because it is so vociferous. So this is a Republican talking about this issue. Watch.
To see him try to hijack this symbol, to wrap himself in it for the purposes premeditatedly, purposefully of dividing the country is the most disgusting thing I've seen in my lifetime, in my 47 years. And what Donald Trump is doing here is as terrible a thing, and maybe the most terrible thing that has ever been done to this country by a president of the United States. Despicable doesn't begin to describe.
So I actually think that Trump's done worse. And by the way, I think Bush has done worse in some ways. And look, the Iraq war killed hundreds of thousands of innocent civilians. But I love his anger and his rage at him dividing us, and that's exactly what he's trying to do. You know, and here Schmidt is going to get even more specific. Listen.
I saw a handsome young man on TV, an NFL player, and he got a little bit jammed up when the reporter asked him a question, is he a racist? And he didn't want to say it, so let me say it. I want to help him out. He's a racist, okay? You look at that speech in Alabama to an all-white crowd, right? We need to get real about this in this country. President of the United States goes down there, and he talks about us and those people. He came proverbially as close as you can possibly come to shouting in a rally the N-word. That's what he did down there. I know it, you know it, Harold knows it, we all know it. And for the Republican Party and its leaders, but for every decent American, we're coming up on the line where enough's enough with this. What he's doing to the country is tragic.
Okay, very strong words, which I really appreciate. But he's not alone. You know, a lot of people are shaken by this. Again, I think Trump's done worse. I think Trump's done way worse on the issue of race. You know, there's 1,000 things that go into here. Birtherism, obviously, his response to Charlottesville, let alone what he did with the Central Park five black kids accused of rape. And he wanted them executed. It turns out later that they didn't do it. Even after he found out they didn't do it, he still said they should stay in jail, which is just outrageous. outrageous, and there's no reason for it other than race. And here Schmidt's pointing out, look, when you talk about us versus them, but not like a slip of the tongue, but you keep saying it over and over again. We know which direction you're going with this. This is not coded language. This is obvious language. And then later in the show, we're going to have a story for you guys. And if you guys don't know, show's live every day, 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern. Check it out on tytnetwork.com or youtube.com/tyt. And Anna's going to come later in the program and tell us about a focus group that CNN did of Trump supporters. And one of them asking the question of, wait, why is Trump criticizing black NFL players way more harshly than he's criticizing neo-Nazis? He's very tepid after Charlottesville, but somebody takes a knee saying don't do police brutality, and he comes at him guns blazing, son of a bitch should be fired, and does it over and over and over again. So although there have been worse issues, I think what resonated with Steve Schmidt and a lot of the Trump voters here is the NFL is a giant part of America, and they pay attention to that. And so when they saw him do it so publicly about such a big issue in their lives, it becomes a little harder to turn your eyes. I think that his issues with race became more obvious to at least more people in the country, and Steve Schmidt just calling it out. And remember, he's a Republican strategist. So what he's trying to do there is not to do damage to the Republican Party. In his own way of thinking about it, he's trying to rescue the Republican Party. He's like, look, if we get stuck with this brand that we're the guys who are tepid about neo-Nazis, we're the guys who are the racists, that's gonna destroy the Republican Party in the long run. And I think he's trying to do the right thing and separate Trump from the rest of them. But let's keep it real. The Republicans had 17 choices in the primary. They chose Trump. And yes, he hadn't made the NFL comments yet, but he'd made plenty of those comments earlier. He had started birtherism. They knew what they were getting. And so Steve Schmidt might want to also look at the Republican voters. But meanwhile, it is much appreciated that he had the courage to call it what it is. Okay, now let's go to more anger on TV here against Trump. So recently, Donald Trump came out and attacked John McCain, even though McCain on 60 Minutes recently said that his prognosis is very, very poor, and he just flat out came out and said he has a very high chance of not recovering. And he said, look, I'm trying to enjoy a life well lived. So now Trump, to be fair, before that interview had gone against John McCain quite vociferously. How else does he ever do anything? But because McCain indicated that he was not going to vote for the latest version of repeal and replacing Obamacare. Let me give you his tweets, and then I'll give you more recent stuff from Trump as well. And remember, this is just a couple of days ago from Trump. And everybody knew that John McCain had a very severe case of brain cancer even then. So he wrote, John McCain never had any intention of voting for this bill, which his governor loves. He campaigned on repeal and replace. Let Arizona down. He goes on to say Arizona had a 116% increase in Obamacare premiums last year with deductibles very high. Chuck Schumer sold John McCain a bill of goods. Sad. Now, don't ever trust any of Donald Trump's numbers. I'm just giving you a sense of how much he's attacking McCain. By the way, Trump recently did a deal with Chuck Schumer. Sad. But of course, he's nowhere near done. More tweets. Large block grants to states is a good thing to do. Also false. Better control and management. Great for Arizona. McCain let his best friend, Lindsey Graham, down. When Lindsey Graham was asked about this, he said he could do any damn thing he pleases. He's an American hero, and he doesn't have to vote with me on my bill. Obviously taking McCain's side over Trump's. Finally, Trump said Democrats are laughingly saying that McCain had a moment of courage. Tell that to the people of Arizona who were deceived, 116% increase. So mocking McCain's moment of courage. Then he went to Alabama, had a rally, and ended a radio show as well, and kept on attacking McCain. Here's a clip from that.
You know, you can call it what you want, but that was that's the only reason we don't have it, because of John McCain. Nobody thought he was a negative vote. Without John McCain, we already have the health care, and it would have been very good, by the way.
So there he is on the Rick and Bubba show. Then he's going to say it at the rally. Let's watch.
They gave me a list of 10 people that were absolute no's. These are 10 Republican senators. Now, John McCain's list. John McCain was not on the list, so that was a totally unexpected thing. Terrible. Honestly, terrible.
Terrible, terrible, honestly. Okay. So now Joe Scarborough's going to go off on him. You know I'm not a big fan of Scarborough. I think he's, of course, right in this case. But what, to me, the most important part is not just about Donald Trump. We already knew what kind of a vicious jerk that he is. Scarborough caught on to that fairly late, let's be honest about that, but he's definitely on board for that now. But it's also a commentary on the Republican voters. First, let's get it started.
I mean, you have no humanity. If you have a man who's dying and you're using him for political punchlines on talk radio and also in audiences in Alabama. And by the way, for people watching at home, if you're an audience and John McCain's getting attacked and he's fighting for life, all right, unless you were raised in a barn, keep your mouth shut, all right? Show a little respect, show a little dignity, show a little class.
I like how Republicans like Scarborough just realized who their voters are. Yeah, no, you quartered these guys who are vicious. You did the Southern strategy. You used dog whistle terms against African Americans for decades and decades, and then you've come to find out that your base is full of vicious guys who will boo a guy who is dying of brain cancer. Color me surprised. Well, it turns out Scarborough at least is surprised. He's going to keep on going.
A man who served his country in uniform when he could have done what Donald Trump did. Could have avoided the draft. His father was one of the most powerful men in America. He could have stayed home like Donald Trump, and he could have chased models. Do you have the character to do that? Well, actually, if you booed John McCain, you've already answered that question. Someone has failed you in your life, and you need to examine that. If you still go to church, you need to pray for yourself this Sunday morning in church. And then when you get your head screwed on right, and you start putting humanity ahead of politics, against of stupidity, against of the tribalism that is destroying this country, then go home and tell your children the story of John McCain and what he did when things got tough, and how he put others ahead of himself, ahead of his safety, even ahead of his freedom, ahead of his life. And if you can teach your children that lesson, maybe they will grow up to have a little more character than you.
So look, I agree with all the things that he's saying here, but you know, when he derides the tribalism, Trump didn't start that. Trump might be the culmination of that, but the Republican Party has been doing that tribalism for a long, long time now. And look, you know, I often criticize Joe Scarborough for defending anyone in the establishment and the elite, and he's doing that here. But the guy's dying, so I totally agree with him that Trump has no bounds, and the people who are enjoying that and treating it like it's a wrestling match when a guy's life is actually hanging in the balance, that is not the right way to go. And yes, I agree they were not raised right. One last piece here.
Well, it shows the extent of the nature of the party now that that's not what happens when John McCain gets mentioned at rallies by the president and his supporters.
They boo.
Yeah.
Who raised them? Who raised these people? Because I guarantee you, I was raised in the same region, in the same socioeconomic background, going to the same Southern Baptist churches, going to the same public schools, going to the same public colleges, state schools that these people went to. So why ask? Who raised these people? Who have they become? that they would boo a man who is fighting for his very life.
And has served the country for
and
decades.
has served this country in uniform, who is a prisoner of war
for this country,
who was actually told, you know what? You can be released from prison because your father's really powerful. He's a powerful man. And so just walk out of the prison, go home. You can be reunited with your family. We'll stop beating you. We'll stop putting scars on your back. Go home. You will be freed. And John McCain said, for those of you booing John McCain right now and are too ignorant to read a book, John McCain said, no, I'm not going to go home until all my men go home with me. You should keep your mouth shut.
Now, all that is true, but remember, Republican voters had 17 choices. They chose Trump. They're still backing Trump. So Scarborough is right to be mad at Trump. And to be fair to Halperin and Scarborough, both guys I criticize often, but they're pointing out here, it's not just Trump. It is also Republican voters. And that's the state of the party as we stand right now. Now, if they reject Trump later, maybe they are a little bit better than Trump. But for now, they're not. That's the Republican Party. All right, when we come back, what I would argue is one of the best weddings in American history. I'll tell you all about it. All right, back on the Young Turks, Control Left writes in, debate question for all future GOP debates. Please list all 10 commandments. Inconceivable they would get it right. You're absolutely right. Super Last Thing, which is an awesome handle on Twitter, says he's trying to compensate, referring to Roy Moore, he's trying to compensate for a small gun with another small gun. No, look, let me defend Roy Moore on the one and only thing I'll defend him on. When I saw that he had a small gun, I was like, maybe he's secure in his manhood. It's usually the guys with the gigantic guns that have issues. Like, no, look at my gun. I got a big gun. I got a big gun. Anyway, El Duende Chingon again says only Donald Trump could get a crowd of people to boo a man dying of cancer. Very fair. Actually, super last thing. Let me go to Jesse Topfer from Super Chat on YouTube. You guys should expand overseas. There's a huge untapped market in Australia for progressive news network, especially in regards to politics. Jess, who says we're not? Oh, damn! Australia, you're not coming for us, we're coming for you. But hold, it's gonna take a while, okay? Let's go over here and finish up the show, okay? Or at least the first hour, okay. So last night we had another football game. This is of course Monday Night Football after all the other games have been played, for those of you who don't live in America, but live in a box instead. Anyway, it was the Cowboys versus the Cardinals, and Donald Trump was going to get in on the action and triple down on his criticism of the NFL. Of course he was. And then I'll tell you what Dallas did. He said, the booing at the NFL football game last night when the entire Dallas team dropped to its knees was loudest I have ever heard. Great anger. Okay, I heard it. It was definitely not the loudest I ever heard. There was definitely booing. They were in Arizona. So this is the worst talking point in American history. Like when Steelers didn't come out for the national anthem and they came out later in Chicago where they were playing Chicago, the fans booed. That's because they're the opposing team. And the Arizona players were also locking arms. So that makes no sense. They were booing the Cowboys when they took a knee because they were the opposing team. And look, I grant you that some of them might have been opposed to the kneeling or whatever, but that wasn't the only reason why. Okay, so let's show it to you, by the way. Here's what it looked like. And that was all the players, the coaches, and even, as you see right there, Jerry Jones taking a knee, the owner. The very, very wealthy, as far as we know, conservative, Chris Christie hugging owner of the Dallas Cowboys. Man, Trump is such a disaster. He got billionaire owners to take a knee in, not necessarily in unison with, but in sympathy with Colin Kaepernick, who they were keeping out of the league. Man, you are an epic fail. You're a living, breathing epic fail, Donald Trump. So, and Jerry Jones was not the first to lock arms with his players. Shahid Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars was, but he was the first to take a knee. Now, that what they did was they took a knee before the anthem, and then they went and locked arms during the anthem. So they're trying to have it both ways. That's okay, that's okay. I think, to me, it's a wonderful sign overall of not just unity, but saying, look, we're not just locking arms. We are, in fact, taking a knee, but we don't want to offend the people that think that the anthem is sacrosanct, and if you're in the wrong body position during the anthem, they're also going to get upset. Or maybe some of the players would also get upset, and you want to respect their thoughts and their rights as well. So, okay. So how does Trump take this? It's a double slap at him. Not only do they all take a knee, but during the anthem, they also lock arms. So no, Trump has a different take on it. And he says, but while Dallas dropped to its knees as a team, they all stood up for our national anthem. Big progress being made. We all love our country. So he solved it. No, they took the knee against you. And they locked arms during the national anthem against you as a sign of unity, saying that what you're doing is unacceptable. It's not like they were the whole league was locking arms during the national anthem before you made your comments. It was only some of the players, and it was all as a show of unity for the protest that Kaepernick started. Now he's trying to twist it like, oh yeah, well, during the anthem, the protest that they're doing, we're making progress. We're making progress. You are such a child, a sad, sad child, baby. Then Trump tweets, ratings for NFL football are way down, except before the game starts, when people tune in to see whether or not our country will be disrespected. Not worried about police brutality, not worried about African Americans and their plea for justice here, not worried about the freedom of speech of the players or anyone else. What's the ratings doing? What's the ratings doing? And then, is it true that the ratings are up before the game? No, there's no evidence of that. Just made that up. It's like, oh, but I got good ratings. I got them good ratings before the game, and they had bad ratings afterwards. Got you. No, you didn't get anybody. You're a fool. You turned the entire league against you. Okay, but he doesn't get it, man. He really doesn't. According to people who were at gathering of right-wingers, he brought them in, he was excited. He thought he was winning. Oh my God. It's like Charlie Sheen standing on a roof with a machete going, I'm winning, I'm by winning. Anyway, he told those supporters, it's really caught on. It's really caught on. No, you schmuck, protests against you have caught on. You are so unbelievably dumb. Okay, he said, I said what millions of Americans were thinking. Now that actually has some degree of truth to it, unfortunately, because it is nowhere near the majority of Americans, but there's 330 million people in the country, and there is some percentage who think, come on, man. Not that police brutality is not that bad, and a lot of them might think that, and a lot of them might say that. But for most of them, I think they think, I just don't want to hear about it, because it's not my problem. I mean, if it's your 12-year-old son getting shot in a park in 2 seconds flat, well, that's your problem, not my problem. I just don't want to hear about it. It makes me uncomfortable, right? If it's disproportionately African Americans who were shot, even though they didn't have any weapons at all, even if they were, in some of the cases they're complying with police, and even though statistically it's worse, I don't want to hear about it. And unfortunately, that is true for a lot of Americans. Well, at least it was true until Donald Trump came in, and now the whole country's hearing about it because he bungled it so badly that he's turned hundreds of millions of Americans against him. So, but he can't stop. He's gonna double down further here. Let's go to video one where he's asked about it today. I think this is actually literally his 5th time doubling down. So is this quintupling down? Let's watch.
Well, I wasn't preoccupied with the NFL. I was ashamed of what was taking place because to me that was a very important moment. I don't think you can disrespect our country, our flag, our national anthem. To me, the NFL situation is a very important situation. I've heard that before. About was I preoccupied? Not at all, not at all. I have plenty of time on my hands. All I do is work.
Don't say I have plenty of time on my tiny little hands. You're supposed to be focusing on Puerto Rico. You've got devastation down there. And he's like, I got plenty of time on my hands so I can go around picking fights with the NFL. Oh, and all I do is work. We see you golfing every weekend. We have TV cameras, we can see it, we have eyes. He's not done yet.
It doesn't take me long to put out a wrong, and maybe we'll get it right. I think it's a very important thing for the NFL to not allow people to kneel. during the playing of our national anthem to respect our country and to respect our flag.
The other dude there is like, what am I doing here? Who am I? Why am I here? Please make the pain stop. Okay. Anyway, when the president, the leader of the government, says that people should be made to kneel or fired if they kneel and should be forced to not speak their minds, we have a significant constitutional issue. If the teams on their own decide to take action, that's private action. When Trump does it, it's public action. And we're supposed to have freedom of speech in this country. And he's basically saying if you exercise your freedom of speech, you should be fired. That's a massive problem. It's gotten so bad, I'm gonna go to video 3 here. Even Kilmeade might have turned on him. Watch.
With the president, and I understand his sentiment, made things so much worse, and the language he used was terrible. When you have Robert Kraft coming out against you, you know you've gone too far. Robert Kraft spends time in the Lincoln bedroom. He's friends with President Trump beyond their wealth and their riches and their circles. He made things immeasurably worse by speaking out, and I know what his intention was, but the language used was just, it was galvanizing the wrong direction.
He made things immeasurably worse. Even Fox and Friends are saying that. You've lost Kilmeade, you've lost Kraft, you've lost Jerry Jones. What do you have left? But another one, he puts out a tweet. The NFL has all sorts of rules and regulations. The only way out for them is to set a rule that you can't kneel during your national anthem. He is now saying, as the leader of the government, you should not allow it, and it is your only way out. He has no idea what's in our Constitution. He doesn't know anything about this country. He doesn't know about our principles. All he cares about is himself. He's such a buffoon. And so when the NFL was asked about it, Joe Lockhart, that's the NFL's executive vice president of communications and public affairs, talked about how everyone in the locker room was united against Donald Trump's comments. And then he had this nice little comment. He said, everyone should know, including the president, this is what real locker room talk is. Damn, nice little reference to the Access Hollywood tapes from the campaign. Shots fired, and friendly fire. Trump is a disaster. He's not winning with this strategy, in this case, quite literally. Okay, now we turn to Puerto Rico for a second and his reaction to that. Okay. So a lot of folks are concerned that Puerto Rico is in terrible shape and Donald Trump's too obsessed with the NFL. Let me give you an update on Puerto Rico. The mayor of San Juan said just yesterday, we've been canvassing one by one all of our elderly homes, finding our elderly, and I'm not kidding, we had to transfer 11 of them in near-death conditions, no food, no water, no electricity, and really the sanitary conditions were deplorable. HuffPost goes on to explain hospitals and care centers for the disabled are running out of diesel, Cruz added. That's the mayor of San Juan. Certain hospital patients, Reuters reported, have been evacuated to the US, but others await an uncertain fate as generators fail. So things are in horrible condition there. Already 16 people have died in Puerto Rico alone. And there are 10,000 people in shelters as we speak. Diesel fuel sent to Puerto Rico from the US is 124,000 gallons because they need that for the generators. Otherwise, people's lives are endangered in the hospitals and other places. People in potential danger if a dam in Puerto Rico fails is 70,000 people in very significant life-threatening danger. But remember, power and communication is out throughout the island, so they might not even know it. And you're seeing pictures there, and you're not going to be surprised after the pictures to find out that 80% of the crops have been damaged, and there's been $780 million lost in agricultural yields. And what has Donald Trump's response been? Well, he tweeted these bizarre tweets a little while ago. He said, Texas and Florida are doing great, but Puerto Rico, which was already suffering from broken infrastructure and massive debt, is in deep trouble. Why would you phrase it that way? Look, I don't think he's doing it consciously, but I think he thinks, you know, Puerto Ricans, they were already in debt. They were already a mess. Texas and Florida are doing great. Just go help them. You're the president. Yes, Puerto Rico is a United States territory. he got heat for all these tweets. I'll tell you his reaction in a second, but let me give you the other two. He said, its old electrical grid, which was in terrible shape, was devastated. Much of the island was destroyed with billions of dollars owed to Wall Street and the banks, which sadly must be dealt with. Food, water, and medical are top priorities and doing well. Hashtag FEMA. Like, do you think that he is bringing up the Wall Street debt as a like, hey, that's outrageous that Wall Street has got them over a barrel here when they're suffering? Or that, hey, Puerto Rico has different rules for how to handle their debt than the rest of the United States of America, and that's fundamentally unfair. First of all, there's no way he even knows that. No, it appears that in the context of those tweets, he's saying like, they already owed all this money to Wall Street. These Puerto Ricans, I don't know what I'm gonna do with them. But he can't have sympathy or empathy for anyone he doesn't associate with. And so I don't know if that's look, some people are not gonna wanna call that racist, but that's fine, you can call it whatever you like, but he has empathy for people who look like him and who are in his circles. And more than even racial, which in this case I think there's plenty of that going on here, and you can make your own judgment call on it or not, I'm giving you all the facts here. But it's like he said about his cabinet. He said, look, I put rich people in my cabinet, I don't want poor people in my government. Because he thinks rich people are successful and good people. Poor people, they owe money to Wall Street. You owed money to Wall Street. He went bankrupt 6 different times. But he thinks, no, that's okay, I've always been among the rich. So I'm a good guy and others, they're not winning. They're not winning, they're a mess. He's in essence calling them a mess here. And of course, with no sense of self and irony or any of that stuff, to know that he actually was known as the king of debt. But of course, his daddy bailed him out over and over again, and apparently at one point, so did the Russians. So I guess he thinks that's okay, as long as, maybe he's gonna call the Russians and get them to help Puerto Rico. Anyway, since he took a lot of criticism for that, he put out a statement later today saying, no, Puerto Rico, quote, is very important to me. And Puerto Rico, the people are fantastic people. I grew up in New York, so I know many people from Puerto Rico. I know many Puerto Ricans, and these people are great people, and we have to help them. The island is devastated. Some of my best friends are Puerto Ricans. I mean, I lived in New York. I mean, they're not really my friends, but I saw Puerto Ricans in New York. Great people, great people. No, I'm gonna go help them. And he finally said he is gonna go down there and visit. He just didn't want to get in the way earlier. Okay. Make of it what you will, but it doesn't seem like it's his top priority. Okay, last story for you guys in the so-called first hour. Okay. So we've had a red wedding, and we know how that turns out. That won't turn out well. But there are weddings that turn out great. Red, white, and blue weddings. What in the world is that? Now, I'm going to argue that this is one of the best weddings in America. I'm going to show you a little video of it, and you're going to go, what's going on here, okay? It seems innocuous enough. Let me show you the lovely wedding here, and then I will tell you why this lovely couple, I think, did something incredibly patriotic and why I want to give them credit. Let's watch.
Today is one of life's happiest occasions, but marriage involves many emotions, good and not so good. Be each other's support system. You will have all of us to lean on as well, but on a day-to-day basis, you will need each other. Listen, be patient, communicate your needs, and don't forget that friendship is one of the foundations of your relationship. Friendship, laughter, and love.
Now you might think that looks like a lovely wedding, but a fairly normal one. Wrong. Those American heroes are Justin Hayashi and Rebecca Chan. You know what they said to their guests? They said, don't give us any gifts. Instead, please give at wolf-pack.com/wedding. I'm not kidding. So they asked every guest to give to Wolfpack instead. How much do I love these guys? So they got no gifts for their wedding. All they got was people giving to a cause that they really believe in, which is to, of course, get money out of politics so we end the corruption in this country. so that people aren't just represented by the elite anymore, but that the Americans can have a true voice. And so I was moved by that. They visited here as well, and I thought, you know what? Why don't we not only thank them, but take it up a notch? So they've already raised thousands for Wolfpack, but can I say 100,000? How amazing would that be if it turns out their wedding registry raised $100,000 for an amazing cause? By the way, a cause that 93% of Americans agree with. 93% of Americans say that the politicians represent their donors over their voters, and they're absolutely right about that. But could you imagine caring enough about that to make that the focus of your wedding, at least your wedding registry? What wonderful, thoughtful people. wolf-pack.com/wedding. Go donate to their, not just their cause, but to their wedding and to their lovely gesture. So Justin and Rebecca, wonderful job. In fact, Wolfpack got together and they wanted to thank them at their latest gathering. So this is some of the state leaders, and I want to show you their thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca and Justin.
I love America. I love Americans. This is what we do together. So make it a special one. Make it the most special wedding that anybody's ever had. So thank you guys for doing that. And by the way, if you want to do it too, look, I know it's a big thing, and that's why it's bold, and that's why they're great. And it doesn't have to be a wedding. It could be a quinceañera. It could be a bar mitzvah. I don't know. Together at wolf-pack.com if you want to do this as well. So let Wolfpack know, and they'll set it up for you. Together at wolf-pack.com. And like I said, go to wolf-pack.com/wedding and donate to this great American couple's wedding and to their cause. Let's get an amendment. Let's make it worthwhile. So can you imagine we pass that amendment? They get to say, hey, look, we were a huge part of it. And that would be absolutely true. Can I see $100,000 in their wedding registry? All right, guys, I love you. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we've got a lot more stories for you guys, including Trump supporters turning on him over the NFL and Puerto Rico issue. Wow, that's interesting. You'll love their quotes. Come right back.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay?
You said I had small hands. They're not small, are they? I never heard that one before.
Welcome to the Control Room, exclusive members coverage of 2IT postgame live from Rebel headquarters in sunny Los Angeles. So Jason, the air is electric after yesterday's postgame.
He's talking about Miami. You know, the only thing about this, Jason, is we've heard the Miami stories. I'm looking at Kasperian's interest here. She's giving him the cordial glance to the side, but I just don't know if it's really there.
Oh, that's where the vagina is.
Okay, that joke landed like Apollo 13 there. And Kasperian gives him the courtesy laugh, gives him the Edwin wave.
Had you had sex at that point when you took that class?
Anyways, so...
Hold on a minute. He's found an opening. Is he finding his way to come back, Jason? Unbelievable! Jack Kruger coming back with a comment. No one would have seen this coming.
And he's in the mood, and there's some music in the background. He's got the sideburns, he's got the long hair in her 30s.
He won't fan himself. There's no way he's ready to... I mean, I've expected...
He's like, well, that was something.
He's got it.
Okay.
It's unbelievable.
Every dog has its day, and this dog is having the best day of his damn life.
That was an outstanding postgame. If tonight's postgame is anything like last night's, we were in for another
Exactly right, Francis. And don't forget to check out the TYT postgame after the Young Turks every weekday on tytnetwork.com/memberslive.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited right now.
Did anybody call for an editor?
Need this in an hour.
But you're an editor too.
Love you.
Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. We do have the streamies tonight. I did a tweet, #TYT for streamies, which is what we're asking you guys to do. And I said, if you retweet this, you'll help us become the best show on the internet or win that award. And what I'm hoping for is for you guys to do it, of course, but also for the trolls to accidentally reply to it, and that'll count as a vote.
Don't tell them. Come on.
The voting's almost over, so keep going. All right, a couple of quick tweets for you guys, not related to that. Adrian Ginn says, I'm concerned this is becoming an anti-Trump thing rather than inequality and brutality of the law on minorities. Well, Adrian, I think you're very largely right about that, but it's at least getting more attention to it, and some percentage of Americans are going, wait, why are they taking a knee?
Yeah.
Which is a question they weren't asking before, so it's a good thing. Old Turk writes in, Drumpf, I have plenty of time on my hands, all I do is work. Analyze that, it won't take long. Yes, indeed, it's not that complicated. Your mama says, I don't think people understand how disastrous it is to live for days on end without power. Stop and imagine it for a moment. No power means no refrigeration, no water treatment plant operations.
Can't charge your phone.
No power for medical equipment, no lights, no nothing. I mean, that has got to be incredibly frightening. One other thing about that, guys, and we're going to talk about it in a second, but people can't get in touch with their loved ones in different parts of the island, and they can't drive to it either. So they have no idea if they're okay or not.
Yeah, and look, I just brought up they can't charge their phones, and that sounds frivolous, but remember, their power grid is completely knocked out, which means that their landlines aren't working, and the only way that they can maybe communicate is if they can use their cell phones in a specific location and get the reception necessary to reach out to people. So
to find out if their family and loved ones are okay or not, and to vote for the Young Turks at #TYT for streamings.
What?
I'm just kidding. That's inappropriate, right? That's inappropriate. Okay, all right. Speaking of inappropriate, that leads us to the first story.
Yes, all right. CNN has been speaking to Trump voters ever since he's been elected, and I love these panels that they do with the voters because it kind of gauges where they're at in regard to their support for Trump. Have they lost their support for Trump considering all of the different scandals he's been involved in, the infighting, the drama on Twitter? Well, Allison Camerata is usually the CNN reporter who speaks to them, and she wanted to know whether or not the latest kerfuffle involving the NFL impacted their support. Take a look at what they had to say.
How many of you are feeling just as positively today about Donald Trump as you were on Election Day? 2 of you. How many of you are having some second thoughts or reservations or regret your vote? 3 of you. Okay, so Jordan, what was the moment that you started regretting your vote?
A lot of it had to do with his choices for cabinet officials. I'm a high school teacher. His choice for the Secretary of Education is completely unacceptable to me and most of my colleagues.
Why? What's the problem with Betsy DeVos?
Inexperience. She now is in charge of public education. She doesn't seem to believe in it. And that was a very big detriment to me.
Peyton, what was the moment that you started having second thoughts?
He's a businessman. I thought he could get the deals done. And once I started seeing that he was too busy tweeting or not really understanding the kind of way Congress and politics really works, I was a little disappointed.
What did you think he could pull off?
I was hoping for his travel ban to kind of go through and not be so divisive. I was hoping for a health care repeal and replace.
Mark, how about you?
I think it was the day after Inauguration Day.
Wow.
Yeah, so just to elaborate on that very last answer, he was annoyed with Trump over the whole crowd sizes issue. He thought that it was ridiculous and petty, and he wanted him to focus on more important things like, you know, the stuff he promised when he campaigned.
Yeah, so look, these guys, as you can tell in their answers, want him to do the things that he promised. We don't agree with them. They're Trump voters. I don't want the Muslim ban. I don't want the repeal and replace, but they do. But they're starting to get annoyed with him. By the way, you think, CNN, fake news. Well, no, they have these panels. This is the first time that I've ever seen a majority flip, or even really a significant minority. One panel that was done recently, it wasn't CNN to be fair, it was another group, it was 25 for 25. They all were still supporting Trump.
Right.
They had not turned at all. And most of the CNN panels, no one had turned. This one, finally, 3 out of 5 have turned.
Yeah, they've turned, and I think it's because enough time has gone by where they're realizing, okay, there are no legislative wins. And at the same time, things have become more divisive. Politics has become more polarized, and it's discouraging. So I'm happy that people are at least aware and they're waking up and they're not just blindly supporting him because they voted for him. Now, this isn't a representative sample, obviously, but it still kind of gives you an idea of what some of his supporters are thinking.
Let me just, before we go to the next one, just a couple of quick notes. And you see the variety of reasons why they're turning. And so I think the first guy is probably a little bit of an outlier, but we've covered cases like that before. They didn't really realize that he was actually going to do the things that he said, some portion of his voters. So we cover the story of the guys down on the border who were all voted for Trump in Texas, and they're like, oh, but he's gonna build a wall right through my property. Well, that sucks. Of course, didn't you hear any of the things that he said? And then the guys who had their friend and neighbor deported in the middle of the country, and they're like, well, I didn't know he was gonna deport the good guys. I thought he was gonna do the bad hombres. In this case, he's like, oh, he really meant it when he said he is going to cut public education. And he did, and he put somebody in charge. So that's him delivering on his bad promises, right? That they thought, no, don't take him seriously, don't take him literally. But I think the most of it is guys realizing what we were saying all along, but their job is not politics or to do a show, so they weren't knee deep in it. They just saw, hey, that guy's talking like a real human being versus the other one that's talking like a robot and the establishment and a regular politician I can't stand. So what they missed was his incompetence. That's why I did the Loser Donald segment. That's why I did 100 different stories literally before the election to tell you how incompetent he is. I didn't talk about what a bad guy he was. I talked about what a loser he is. And now that's his supporters going, I didn't know he wasn't going to get anything accomplished.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, in the next video, they specifically address Donald Trump's tweets to NFL players who refused to stand during the national anthem.
How many of you are comfortable with the president weighing in on what's happening during the national anthem and some players taking a knee? Are you happy that the president talked about it this weekend or tweeted about it? Nobody's happy that the president weighed in.
I think that these players have the First Amendment right to kneel during the national anthem or sit out. And it's just an argument that really didn't need to be picked. And now it's what everybody's talking about when there are so many other things that we could be talking about, like the hurricane in Puerto Rico.
So why is President Trump weighing in on this?
I think it's because he loves America. I don't like the disrespect that these players are showing. But on the other hand, as my husband and I both say, we may not like it. But my husband served 21 years. My brother-in-law died in service to guarantee both the NFL players' rights to free speech and the president's right of free speech.
I'm a son of and a grandson of veterans, and I was always taught that I might not like what you say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it. And that's what the First Amendment's about, and that's what this country's about.
Oh my God, that made me feel so good.
Yeah, you see that? There's
So much
hope.
respect for Kathy Gibson especially, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have to like it, but you're right. I mean, that's what our soldiers fight for, to maintain democracy and freedom in this country. And that's what they're doing. They're practicing their First Amendment rights. Having the president urge NFL owners or team owners to fire them is crazy.
Yeah, so look, for the Peyton, the guy on the left side, remember, he was the one that's in favor of the travel, what he calls the travel ban, which is in reality a Muslim ban. It's not like he didn't sign on for discriminatory policies, but he's not like Trump, where Trump is actively racist. And that's the whole point, whether it's the travel ban or attacking black players for being against police brutality, et cetera. Peyton's like, well, I mean, I don't get it. They're Americans. They do get to have their opinion, right? So even if some people might be in favor of discriminatory policies I don't agree with, still their heart might not be in the wrong place. And we have to keep an open mind about that too. Or they're certainly not anywhere near where Donald Trump is in terms of actively disliking these different groups and working against them.
Absolutely. And just one comment in regard to the guy that you were talking about who's in favor of the Muslim ban. You know, I got to give him credit for bringing up the issue of Puerto Rico because, you know, and this is my bad, this is my fault, my bias, but I would have just assumed that Trump voters don't care about Puerto Rico. You know what I'm saying? And so to hear someone who voted for Trump and who supported Trump say that, it just shows you, you know, the human side that, you know, oftentimes in the media does get dehumanized. Because of some of the more hateful rhetoric that they've supported from Trump. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. In fact, he said in another part of the interview that he didn't understand why Trump was more eager to attack the black NFL players than neo-Nazis.
Yeah.
That's a great point. It's a great point. And when Alison Camerata asked, why do you think that is? He said, quote, I wish I knew. It completely baffles me. And then Mark O'Brien, one of the guys you just saw there, said about him talking about the NFL instead of criticizing neo-Nazis, he says, that is a huge concern of mine. What is going on in that man's mind? So this is really heartening because more so than, hey, we're gonna get him politically and all that talk. No. It's encouraging to see that, yes, still at the end of the day, some Republican voters, unlike Trump, do understand the point of the country. They do understand that we can disagree, but still respect to freedom of speech and respect other races.
Absolutely.
And be unified against things like neo-Nazis. Of course that should be the case. But with Trump, after Charlottesville, it's like, I mean, there are good people on both sides. He hasn't even said that there are good people on both sides of the kneeling issue.
Yeah.
He just calls them sons of bitches and says they should be fired.
It's crazy.
It is absolutely nuts, and it's good to see that really conservative Americans are saying, hey, we get it. We know what this country is about, and it is diversity of opinion, and we're all allowed to have our opinions, and it's weird that the president doesn't understand that.
All right, moving on to other news. There's been quite a bit of backlash against NFL players who protested Donald Trump's statements on Twitter in regard to those who refused to stand during the national anthem. Now, one example of that was when Patriots players decided to kneel instead of stand after Trump's tweets. These are players who just stood for the most of the time and then realized, okay, well, we need to unite and we need to support those who want to kneel. Well, Stephen Pena, who is a public official in Brockton, Massachusetts, said some pretty negative things about Patriot players who joined in on the protest. Now, he's with the Parks and Recreation Commission, and he left a comment on a Facebook story about kneeling Patriot players in which he referred to them as turds for taking a knee during the national anthem. But it gets worse. He says, turds, your dumbass isn't paid to think about politics. Dance, monkey dance.
Now,
again, this is a public official, right? In Brockton, Massachusetts, he's with Parks and Recreation. He got quite a bit of backlash after he made those statements on a public forum online. And so he just wants to make sure he clarifies what he meant by monkey. He didn't mean for it to be racist. He says it was not meant to be a racist comment, and if it was taken as such, that's regrettable.
Okay, so look, there is a small percentage chance that this guy's totally clueless and doesn't know that is a derogatory comment aimed at African Americans a great majority of the time. But even if we grant him that, which I don't, I think that's a small chance that he made an honest mistake. Even if you were to grant him that, though. So your thing is, okay, so if you are an entertainer of any sort, you're my monkey. And so you're, unlike other Americans like plumbers and guys who take care of parks, you're not allowed to have an opinion, and you're not allowed to be concerned that maybe your kids are gonna get shot when they're unarmed, like it happened to Tamir Rice in Cleveland. You're not allowed to participate in the process because you're there for the entertainment of this Stephen Pena guy,
right?
And so you're supposed to dance for him like a monkey. So it's such an asshole thing to say any way you slice it.
I just feel like, the people who are up in arms and make these types of statements online just fundamentally misunderstand what this country is supposed to be about, right? Political activism, political discourse. I mean, that is the heart of democracy, making sure that people feel free to speak their mind and say what they need to say about a particular political issue. They don't want that. They want to shut them up. So are you not in favor of free speech? Are you not in favor of a democratic system where people are able to take part in voting, in voicing their opinions, in engaging in this type of rhetoric? It's crazy to me.
And if you didn't know that the great majority of the athletes doing it are black, and that that's a derogatory thing to say about blacks, and that might get you in trouble, you also haven't shown very good judgment as a public official. But wait, it's about to get much worse, not for him, but for the next guy.
Yes, okay, so then there's the issue of a volunteer fire chief in Pittsburgh. He was upset because of the Steelers protesting. Now, the Steelers did something a little different from the Patriots. They decided to stay in the tunnel during the national anthem instead of coming out and standing during the national anthem. And so Paul Smith, who is a volunteer firefighter at the Cecil Volunteer Fire Station #2, posted a derogatory response on Facebook, which was directed at Mike Tomlin. He's the head coach, and he used a racial slur. So I'm not gonna say the racial slur, you guys know what it is, but I will read you his comment. He says, Tomlin just added himself to the list of no good N-words. Yes, I said it. So he seemed pretty proud of his statement there. Thought it was bold.
So let's pause there for a second before his eventual backpedal, so he doesn't get himself in trouble. First, a no good N-word. No lack of clarity here. Okay, I know that no matter what anybody says, people always but maybe it wasn't racist.
I mean, that was as clear as you can possibly get. There's no way to spin that.
Yeah, and so remember that the players are protesting in the first place because they're treated as less than equal, and part of the idea here is Black Lives Matter. So here's a guy saying, "Oh yeah, you're a no good N-word," so thereby validating the idea that some people think that your life isn't equal.
Exactly.
And so there's just no lack of clarity. But the second part that's amazing is he's a fire chief, he's a public guy, he says this publicly on Facebook and feels emboldened to say it. Like, it's okay, I can come out of the closet now. And he adds, yes, I said it, take that, you N-words. Now, I mean, what are we supposed to do here? Are we supposed to have understanding for them? It's crazy. So, I mean, what if they're going into a situation where there's a fire in an African American's house? Is he not going to want to rescue them because they're no good N-words?
That's right. So that's, look, the reason why these stories matter, and it's not random private citizens. These are public officials. In this case, we're talking about a fire chief. And if he perceives a certain group of people as less than, as not as important, as not as valuable to society, then does that impact the way he does his job? And you're talking about people's lives here. And that's the reason why it really stood out to me. And it was so clear. What he said was clear. There wasn't any, he can't use the same excuse that the initial person that we talked about used, where it's like, oh, I didn't know that monkeys was a negative way to refer to black people. In this case, the N-word is not the way that you should refer to black people. You know that that's offensive, beyond offensive.
Yeah, and before we get to his non-apology, he's a fire chief. So whether he does it consciously or maybe just subconsciously, is he less likely to send people into harm's way into a fire, which is their job, which is an amazing job, by the way, and my nephew was a volunteer firefighter too, and it's a hell of a job. But is he maybe going to take less of a chance if it's an African American household as opposed to a white household? Well, if he thinks that you're not equal, maybe. And then if your kids die because of, no, we can't have that. That's crazy. So now his non-apology.
He says, I am embarrassed at this. I want to apologize. I was frustrated and angry at the Steelers not standing the anthem. This had nothing to do with my fire department. I regret what I said. But here's the thing. There have been countless times where I've been angry, let's say at a story that we're covering. And my initial reaction isn't to talk about their race or say something disparaging about their ethnicity, their race, their background. Have I said offensive things about certain people? Absolutely, but my mind just doesn't go there. The fact that his mind immediately went to no good N-word, I mean, there's no excuse for that.
Yeah, so there's 1,000 ways to attack people, and we would know, but attacking them based on their race makes no sense at all. So, and look, here, he says, I regret what I said. Well, hey, Cenk, is that an apology? No, it just means I regret I got in trouble for it. Remember, his original comment was, yeah, I said it.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, oh, I regret what I said because he's embarrassed by it. And then but the thing that annoyed me the most was, I don't want, this had nothing to do with my fire department. Yeah, we know that. We're not putting it on your fire department.
We're putting it on you as the fire chief who probably shouldn't be a fire chief.
You know why he's saying that? Because he's hiding behind the fire department. Nobody was criticizing your fire department. We were criticizing you. So when you say, I don't want this to be on the fire department, in other words, remember, I'm with the fire department, okay? And it's not fair to blame them. Well, nobody's doing that, so problem solved, okay? So yes, these guys exist, man. And if you're not black, you could be outraged by it, and we're outraged by it. And that shows that you have empathy, and God bless your heart. But even if you're in that category or not in that category, just think for a second, if you are black in this country and you know a certain percentage of the police chiefs and the fire chiefs and the guys who drive ambulances, and the list goes on and on, don't think that you're equal to other people. and they think that your life doesn't matter as much.
But don't complain about it, okay? Don't protest in the streets. That would be inconvenient for people. And don't be peaceful in your protest either, where you just kneel during the national anthem. Just don't complain. You're not allowed to.
Yeah,
that's their take.
I even hesitate talking about it to some degree because I feel that it's so depressing. But look, the way that we're going to get past it is to talk about it and to tackle this and to solve this as a country together, because it is unacceptable for a certain percentage of Americans to think I might not get rescued because of what that guy thinks about my whole race. That is very, very unfortunate, and unfortunately true for a percentage of Americans. But let's all get better together, and the way you do it is first recognize the problem. And thank God for Colin Kaepernick, because he helped to highlight this issue, which leads to more people recognizing the problem. Unfortunately, these guys and Donald Trump, our president, are not among the people who recognize it. But at least I think a majority of Americans do, and at least now a majority of the NFL does. Okay, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got a lot more stories for you guys, including cops who are being reprimanded for being against cop brutality. Okay, when we return.
It's the post-game show. Brett Ehrlich and Kim Horcher join me.
I think there's an interesting thing to be written or done about the logic of repealing EPA regulations, because that is baby killing.
Yeah.
Like, you're a baby killer. Like, everything you're doing is aborting babies. And you can go specifically to like Monsanto and pesticides that end up creating birth defects that abort babies. So in a way, that is an abortion clinic that you're starting by repealing FDA regulations and EPA regulations.
That's right. But we know what they really mean when they say that they're pro-life.
Right, and that's the thing for me is like, I'm tired of everyone speaking in code and rushing to like confirm their pre-existing biases. I just want them to tell me what they're actually pissed about. Like, it seems like with the things that we were talking about on one show, we're like, people are okay with Trump having his own private server.
Yeah.
It's like, well, you got mad at someone else for that.
Her emails.
Right,
yeah,
her emails.
Yeah.
But like, so, okay, that's fine. You know your bullshit, I know your bullshit. So tell me what you're actually mad about, because it's probably your dad.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably your mom and your dad, and that's why you're mad. And it's created this crazy shit from this probably very personal relationship you have with your parents. And I get it, and you're angry and frustrated, and you're talking in strange codes and giving certain people passes and other people not. You read headlines and articles in this sprint to find some way to confirm what you already believe.
Yeah.
And you stop when you get it, and you don't read the end of it. Like, I get it, but tell me what you're actually mad about.
Can we, okay, you know what? This is a good therapeutic exercise to close out the post-game show. Why don't we each state what we are the most angry about?
I'm the most angry about boycotts right now.
Oh.
Just like, oh, boycott it, that thing's the worst. Like, if I were to get into a business right now, it would be litmus paper sales. Because everyone's like, litmus test on that, fuck you, boycott, delete.
Yeah.
And it's like, read the history of boycotts. Which ones are good and which ones are like, you weren't gonna buy that shit anyway.
I am angry about willful ignorance. I am angry about throwing away data that we have applied intellectual power to for a reason. I am tired of the rejection of intellectualism or deciding that intellectual people are elitist or somehow they think they're better than you. Maybe they are, they know things, and you should try to know things about something. Forcing yourself into the dark is never going to bring us forward. It's never going to end up with a positive result.
back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Joshua Capo Beta writes in, Anna is bae every single day.
Oh my God, I love you. Thank you.
That's very nice. John Connor writes in, I'm thinking Anna Kasparian's dressed for a later function. Hashtag good luck TYT. Hashtag TYT for streamies.
Yes, I am. A lot of people are commenting on my hair. Thank you for the nice comments, but don't get used to it because this took way too much time to do. Someone was like, oh, Anna's hairstylist needs a raise, which means me.
Oh, okay, all right, yes. Well, we do many jobs at once here. Yes, we are going to go, like I said earlier in the show, we're going to present for Storyteller of the Year, which is kind of cool. I'm not sure I've ever presented for an award before.
Neither have I.
And then we're up for Show of the Year, hashtag TYT for streamies. Voting's still going on. And that's how you vote, through Twitter, by doing hashtag TYT for streamies. Okay, member shout-outs, David Stowe and Kimberly Ann Cunningham. Thank you guys, we appreciate it. You get the whole show, of course, ad-free. If you're a member, tytnetwork.com/join. And today, since we got to run to the streamies, Steve and Dave are gonna give you an extra post-game, okay, which is awesome. All right, what's next, Casper?
All right. 2 police officers in Chicago have been officially reprimanded after a photo featuring them went viral online. Now, in the photo, they are shown kneeling in solidarity with NFL players who also kneel during the national anthem. And this whole story came about when an activist approached them and asked if they supported people like Colin Kaepernick. So the officers were approached by an activist named Arleta Clark, who asked the 2 officers whether they were opposed to police brutality and racism. They responded in the affirmative, knelt down in solidarity with Clark, Kaepernick, and the broader message. So that was what you saw in that photo. It was posted on Instagram, went viral, and for the most part got a lot of support. But after enough people saw it, of course, there are going to be some who are opposed to it. And the police department was notified of the image, and they released a statement indicating that these police officers would be reprimanded. Now, I also want to be clear that the department does have a pretty strict policy when it comes to partisan political speech while on duty. They are obviously in uniform and they made a political statement, and so that's the reason that the department is giving for reprimanding them. Department members are prohibited from participating in any partisan political campaign or activity while on duty, including but not limited to distributing campaign literature or wearing or displaying political paraphernalia. Now, the official statement from the department is as follows. We are aware of the photo and we will address it in the same way we have handled previous incidents in which officers have made political statements while in uniform, with a reprimand and a reminder of department policies.
Okay, so I'm a little split on this. I mean, I get it, they have a policy.
Yeah.
Now, and at the end of the day, it's a reprimand and a reminder of department policies.
Yeah,
they'll live. They'll
I know.
Be okay.
Some people are mistaking that as these officers getting fired. They're not getting fired. Yeah.
Okay. Now, on the other hand, they're not really doing political paraphernalia. It's not like they're saying vote for Bob or Susie or Republican or Democrat. It easily could have been interpreted as not a political statement. And then think about what the statement is. It's against police brutality, and they're police. I hope that all the cops agree that they're against police brutality. So if that's against your guidelines to be in favor of, to be against police brutality, then I'm a little worried about your guidelines. It's super easy to say that's not a political statement. Of course, we're all against police brutality.
Yes, look, I hate zero tolerance policies. I think that, once you put out a zero tolerance policy in regard to political speech, and you're talking about public officials putting forth a policy that squashes political speech. I mean, I don't know if you can have a debate about whether or not this is protected by the First Amendment. I get the idea, though, that, hey, we need to have a policy in place because we might have some police officers who say things that lead to the community further distrusting them, right?
Yeah.
And so we've had a number of stories where police have said things that were horrible toward the black community or those who have been protesting, and that understandably leads to the community not trusting them. However, like in this case, I feel like this is something that should be protected, right? It seems like the only time cops get reprimanded or face a punishment is when they criticize other cops or call out other cops. And I think right now, more than ever, we need the good cops to come forward and be like, you know what? No, we're not going to stand for this. All of these, murders against people who are unarmed, we're not going to stand for this. We got to change the policing. We got to change the training. That's what we've been asking for. And now finally, we have these two cops who made a mild statement by kneeling in a photo, and they get reprimanded.
So, look, I totally agree with the policy overall. I don't want a cop showing up in a MAGA hat, right? I also don't want a cop showing up with a "I'm with her" sticker, okay? Or even a Bernie So Punk t-shirt, which you could get at shoptyt.com. But because what if some people are made uncomfortable? They weren't with her, or it's a very wealthy person's house and they wrongly are made uncomfortable by Bernie Sanders and they're not sure the cop is on their side. We can't have it. I totally agree that you should leave politics out of it. But Kaepernick taking a knee and doing, raising their fist, and all the players now doing it, and even some of the NFL owners doing it, are not saying we're against cops. They're not saying we're against any race, certainly, right? They're saying we want to make sure that everybody's treated equally, and that we don't have police brutality. Especially if you're the police, you got to agree with that message.
Right.
And so, and the last thing is that a lot of people have a wrong impression of cops. They think, for example, we're against cops. That's crazy. We talked about it a million times. We want better training for cops because there are cops, and we want them to protect the community, all of the community, and we want them trained better to do that so they don't shoot as quickly, et cetera, right? And then some on the right think, oh, the cops don't like you guys. I'm sure that's true for some of the cops, but that's actually not at all true for a lot of the cops. I know from my personal life, I mean, cops are shouting out at me all the time, but not in that way. No, so, and they'll be like, hey, Young Turks, hey, I watched your show, hey, keep going. In DC, in New York, in LA, in DC when I got arrested for civil disobedience to get money out of politics, as I was going to do the paperwork, one of the cops was like, Young Turks, keep it going. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't want him going to somebody else's house and saying that, because that would be political, right? But so not all cops are alike. That's ridiculous way of thinking on either side, right? It's great. I love to see them doing this, saying we're against police brutality. I wish the department was a little bit more understanding of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just one comment in regard to cops liking us or not liking us. It's not our job to care about cops liking us, right? It's our job to do the best we can with these stories and be honest with you guys and give you the facts. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for the cops that watch the show, see some of the criticisms that we've had in regard to police training, and they've been receptive to it and understanding. So much love to them. All right, moving on to something completely different. College basketball drama. That's what's happening right now. Bribes, corruption, a lot of shady dealings. And apparently a bunch of people have been charged in a federal corruption case. Let me give you the details. The people implicated in this case involve coaches at Auburn, Oklahoma State, Arizona, and Southern California, and they were all accused of accepting bribes in exchange for offering to steer players to preferred financial advisors, business managers, and agents. Now, the attorney who is, essentially investigating this case had a press conference where he kind of specified, the